Okay guys, so I want to kind of do the backside of this video first because I want you to be able to see what we're getting. Now remember, the two beds that I'm harvesting from are just 16 foot long and 4 foot wide, and yet we're getting literally 100 radishes out of it, and we're gonna eat all of this, the greens, everything. We're gonna eat the entire radish, all of this kale. And this is what the bucket that the kale's in actually looks like. So you can see it's a pretty decent size. And then this massive head of oak leaf lettuce and these buttercrisp heads. And there's still plenty more to harvest. I just don't believe in harvesting more than you can use or take. You can leave it in the ground, take it for later, or you can give it away, and that's perfectly fine. You can give it to local food banks, you can give it to your friends and family, but if you don't have a use for it right now, and it's not, the seasons aren't changing, it's not at risk of frost damage or of going to seed, I just leave it in the ground and harvest what we need, what us and our friends and family can use, and that's it. So this just kind of gives you an idea of just what you can grow and how much food you can produce in a fairly small space. I mean, 16 foot by 4 foot, 2 beds, it seems like a lot, but really it's not a ton. So if you have just a small urban lot, which we have a pretty good sized urban lot, but if you have an urban lot, you have areas to put in food, it's really great, because with 128 square feet of space, you have more than enough food for a few days. So today I wanted to show you these beds. I've showed them a few times, but now that spring is just 2 weeks away, they're really starting to pop out and liven up. Now these beds were originally our blackberry beds, and you can see the tall plants growing up the trellis. Those are all blackberry plants, and they're just starting to come back. You can see the new growth and flowers coming in on them. They overwintered really well. They go dormant and they don't grow, but come spring they start growing again and producing fruit, which is really cool. And they live for a really long time. So we're easily expecting blackberries out of these thornless blackberries for another 10 to 15 years. Now, there's a ton of stuff growing all around it, and that's because when I first made these beds, they're 16 foot long and 4 foot wide. There was so much space because we only had 4 thornless blackberry plants planted about 4 feet apart, 3 to 4 feet apart. And that meant that all of the space was just being unused. So we started seeding it until the berry plants were large enough to actually produce. So along the inside of the trellis, you can see it's our sweet peas. And they're ones that we eat for the pod. But you can also eat, because of the type of sweet pea variety this is, you can also eat the pea shoots if you chose to. And they just make a really nice filler. And the great thing about it is before spring hits come February, I'm going crazy ready to start planting green beans and everything else, but we're still expecting freeze. So these peas are a really great way to get something started out in the garden, and you know that about 2 or 3 weeks before they die off and it gets too hot for them, to go ahead and plant your green beans or whatever beans you want to plant down in the soil next to them, and then you can just cut these pea shoots off at the base with some scissors and leave the bottoms in there and the roots to break down and provide more nitrogen, which is why I planted these in the first place. Not only the great filler, but they provide a really large amount of nitrogen to the other plants, and they don't need a ton of nitrogen themselves since they fix it. And so you just plant your green beans down in between the peas, and they'll fill this trellis up until the blackberries start producing more leaves and opening up more, and then we'll stop planting things on the trellis and just let them have their trellis back. But down here we decided to go ahead, these are some Pears cause lettuces, and they're starting to really head up pretty good. There's 3 right there. And then down here we have chamomile, which you can see. I've never grown chamomile before, so when these first started popping up, I actually started pulling them out. So this is German chamomile. If anyone has these popping up in your garden, don't pull them out. That's what they are. And then we have all different types of lettuce. This is the Four Seasons lettuce. It's a French variety, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's just starting to pop up. This is my first year growing it, and I'm really excited to be growing it. Here we have rutabagas growing up and some more Paris cause lettuce, and these are white. These are the white colored rutabagas right here, which you can't even see roots to. There we are. And we do have ants in our garden, but they don't really bother us, and I don't really bother them, honestly. Most of the time, unless they start to become a nuisance or I'm getting bit a lot, I just leave them be. That's because last year I was growing some okra in my garden, and there were pests such as aphids on it, and believe it or not, the ants are actually harvesting the aphids and other destructive pests off of my okra, so I just let them be. Now, if you have things like sweet corn, ants do become a problem because they tend to eat the corn because of the sweetness, so that's the only time I've really had a problem with the ants in my garden. This right here is a butterhead lettuce, and it's actually heading up really well too. This one I'll probably go ahead and take out. I really like to harvest outer leaves and leave the rest of it, but we are a large family, so a lot of times we need a whole head of lettuce. But the great thing is I like to leave roots on because it helps them survive longer in the fridge. But the big problem with that is there are so many different plants growing down here around them that if we disturb the roots, a lot of the times we're going to pull up all of these baby plants that we planted to take their place. So when we pull out this plant or cut it out, then all of the little plants around it, they're just going to take its place. So I'll just go ahead and kind of pull this one up. You can see. And here are its roots. And you just wash them and you can leave them on. So it's a pretty nice little head of lettuce for sure. And then in its space down here, you can see there are already all of these lettuces popping up. So those are going to fill in the space. And as they get large, like that one, we'll just continue to pull them out. And that'll make space for all of the other plants to take over, which is a really good system because you're not wasting anything. You're not having to keep plants inside for prolonged periods of time. We're just throwing the seeds out and letting it grow on its own. These are our radishes, which I've actually made a few videos on. They're really tired because they've been here for a while. These my 8-year-old planted, so it's time for all of these radishes to come out of the garden because they're pretty good size for cherry bill radishes. So I try to put off harvesting everything at once if I can, just because if it's out here in the garden, it really acts kind of like its own storage area. It stays in the ground, it continues to grow, and it just makes it easy so I don't have to fill up the fridge or worry about produce going bad. This here is a dill. It's a baby dill. Dill get up to 10 feet tall easily, so this is gonna grow pretty massively, but it's really cool. We just have 2 in this bed that I know of so far. But like I said, spring's just coming around the corner in about 2 weeks, so this bed's going to be changing rapidly, so who knows what's going to end up in there. And then here are some more rutabagas, and they're also mixed with our turnips, and these are the purple tops, and they are gorgeous. These are actually one of my favorite. They grow so easily, produce well. There is a little bit of pest damage on it, but really the pests have been minimal. And I've just been really grateful for that. This is why I really push eating your greens, because if you look at them from up top, you don't even know that these are a root vegetable. I mean, there's just so much greenery on top, and it's all edible. It's all really high in nutrients and vitamins. So we eat the entire vegetable. It really saves a lot. I just hate the idea of all of these going to waste. Even with our cabbages, those big leaves that you take off cabbages, those are all completely edible. So You don't have to just eat the head of cabbage. You can eat the entire cabbage, including the leaves. I wouldn't eat the roots though. They don't taste great. Not even sure you can eat the roots, although I imagine you can. This is still in dormancy. It's actually a muscadine cross grape, and it'll still be a couple of weeks before it really starts waking up well. As you can see down here, we have some more German chamomile, a little bit of weeds. We do get some grass in our beds, but it's really not that bad. And honestly, once all of the lettuce and all the other plants fill in, we don't have to worry about weeding that much. It makes a really big difference to have these beds just a little bit elevated. Here is another dill, and you can see this one is quite a bit taller. It's about 18 inches tall, and it even started growing during the winter time. It survived several frosts. All of these plants in here have survived several frosts. So we just had a frost about a week ago, and it's really impressive to see that you could grow in the winter and everything survive, and then when spring comes it just starts really growing. Here's one of our kale plants, and I haven't been harvesting kale like I should, and so what I do when I harvest it, I just come and I pick all of these outer leaves off like this, and it actually creates a pretty substantial amount of food, because the big leaves are usually the first that are targeted for pest. But I mean, here's just part of the leaves that I would harvest, and that's a pretty good amount. And so here we have more heads of lettuce. I'm not entirely sure. This may be buttercrisp heads also, or a butter leaf lettuce of some type. Here is our red Russian kale kind of popping up down there. I didn't even realize this was over here, so I'm not sure if it seeded itself or if it came in a mix. But the really cool thing about kales is they're biennial, so the first year they're going to grow, and the second year they're going to produce their seed. And that makes it really great because you're guaranteed to have kale even during the summer, and it's not going to seed. It does get more bitter during the summer, but we don't really mind because you can cook it, and it kind of helps take the bitterness away. So here's all the little lettuces growing. So over here is also, this is also a blackberry bed, but I realized that the strawberries actually have the same pH requirements as the blackberries, and the same, very similar to their nutrients needs. So I went ahead and started planting strawberries down here, and I'm really excited because the idea is that these are seascape strawberries, and they slowly create mats, and that's what I want. I want these blackberries to grow up these trellises, and then down here these strawberries to create a mat, which is kind of gonna keep the soil moist and keep anything from happening to the roots of the plants, which is fine by me. The really cool thing is also that these peas are growing on the outside of the trellis, and I intended to take the outside part of the trellis off, but it actually creates a really cool cover for the strawberries, so we don't have to worry about birds getting into it as much, because all of these are growing on the outside, and it kind of covers up the strawberry plants. This is one of my favorite lettuces of all time. I believe it's a red oak leaf lettuce, and I found it in a seed pack of burpees. There's just a mix that we threw in here, but it's turned out to be one of my favorite. And that may not be what type of lettuce it is, but that's what the seed packet said was the only red lettuce mixed into it. So I really enjoy this. It's just massive. It's actually time for this whole plant to come up, because there's another one growing right underneath it. Wow, look at the roots on that. So that's a pretty good sized plant right there. Takes up the entire bowl all by itself. And then here you can see there's already another one kind of growing in its place. So that's a pretty good example of what I mean when I say it's just gonna, the little plants are just gonna kind of grow up and take over. And it's just a really good system. It really kind of does all of the work, and I don't have to do a whole lot to keep them alive, watered, and harvested. So here's a few more of my kells. This is a mixed kell. There's some lacinato kell leaves in it, and there's also some, I don't know, maybe Russian red kell, and another type that I've not seen before. But I just got this at the grocery store as a mix, and I planted it. Because why buy a few kell leaves for $3 or $4 when you can buy an entire kell plant and plant it and harvest it again for the remainder of the winter and through the spring and fall of the next year. And so it's really cool because this year they'll all produce seed, but up until that point we'll get leaves all year round, and then we'll get the bonus benefit of having seed once they start to send out flower stalks next spring. And then here's some peas. You can see they're starting to flower. These are the same sweet peas that are planted on the other trellis. It's really cool. And then here we have some curly leaf kell. This is considered a dwarf variety. So at first I was really concerned because they weren't getting very big, but they really don't. This is pretty much it. So if you have some small spaces, want just a nice border or maybe something edible to throw in your flower bed or on your porch, this is really cute. And I just really love it. They haven't had any issues at all with pests. So usually you see like a lot of the curly leaf plants will kind of get caterpillars and things stuck inside of the leaves because of all the places there are to hide. But I have had zero pest issues whatsoever with this plant. So it's been really lovely. And here we have another tiny Russian red leaf kell kind of growing in there. So these are some of the blackberry plants, and you can see they kind of grow. They grow up the trellis, but they also produce, oh, see, I know there's one in here. They also start to kind of produce under the ground, and they just spread everywhere. So they'll send up shoots all over this bed. So eventually, these blackberries will really send up shoots all over the bed, and as the strawberries mat over, they'll just shoot up through the strawberries. And so it really creates this really amazing symbiotic relationship because the strawberries are keeping the soil moist and protecting it, and the blackberries are able to just kind of grow up. And then when the hot summer comes, they'll kind of lean over, and they'll shade the strawberries from our extreme heat. Because in South Texas, that's something that we really struggle with, is the heat. And a lot of times strawberries will die off from the heat before winter even hits because it's so incredibly hot here. And so I'm hoping to kind of avoid that by them working together. You can see we have some strawberries. Yes, they're growing on the soil. No, I'm not really worried about it. It hasn't been an issue even with watering. There hasn't been a ton of splashing up. We kind of water with a shower head that's similar to the rainfall, and I water at a distance, so I'll water far away so it lightly hits the plants, and I'll let it soak it over time. In the front bed, I actually have soaker hoses, but they haven't worked out as well as I thought. The soil gets so dried out so quickly that it takes a few minutes for the water to be able to soak in. So the soaker hoses, it just kind of runs off the top. So we really need to pre-wet the water beforehand. And all of these are growing in compost. This is mushroom compost that it's growing in, and we've kind of added to it. We've added rabbit manure, and the beddings. This is, you can kind of see it there from our rabbits that we had last year. And I have used some organic microlife fertilizer, acidifier for these plants. Now, that's really not good for the peas and things of that nature, but it takes 3 to 4 months for it to break down fully. So by the time that it's broken down, the peas aren't even going to be in this bed, and it's just going to be the berry plants. So it really doesn't matter. And at this point, as far as my kell are concerned, this is their second year growing. So everything that we're getting out of them, in my opinion, is really, it's just a bonus. Because they've been continuing to grow all of this time.